Hello, everyone. I'm Patrick Tucker, Science and Technology Editor at Defense One, and I am excited to continue today's discussion with Rear Admiral James Aiken, the commander of U.S. Navy's Fourth Fleet. If you've been following our coverage and also following the Navy of the last couple of years, you know that Fourth Fleet is playing a critical role leading the U.S. Navy's pioneering work incorporating unmanned systems and different forms of artificial intelligence into operations, and also plays a really critical role, of course, keeping fishing, keeping mercantile vessels, keeping naval activity safe and lawful in U.S. Southern Command, a critical part of the world for the United States Navy for U.S. commerce, global commerce, really. And it's also a part of the world where we have seen China and Russia increase their presence and their activity. So a ton happening in Southcom and a lot of new activity around future technologies, unmanned systems, combined with the U.S. Navy. Rear Admiral, thank you so much for joining us today.
Patrick, I'm so excited to be here. So excited to be part of your panel today. Certainly, it's an honor to be able to speak after the CNO, really align with what she's done. She's really carried the mantle from what Admiral Gilday started just about a year ago with SECNAV, talking about the, really operationalizing, moving from experiments to operationalizing the unmanned force. We here call it the hybrid fleet. And really what we've really done is really tried to push for that hybrid fleet mentality across the AOR. And by hybrid, it's a combination of unmanned surface, air, some surface, coupled with, actual manned ships, manned aircraft, in order to provide maritime domain awareness and ISRT.
Yeah, wonderful. Absolutely. Yes, thank you so much for being here. So one of the things that in sort of talking about this effort last April, former CNO Gilday discussed was how unmanned systems in particular could play a critical role in curbing what he described as gray zone operations. He's pointed specifically to the Southcom AOR and the proliferation of smuggling and other types of gray zone activity going on there as the sort of setting where unmanned systems could play a big role. So in talking about this hybrid fleet, and for you right now, you're creating it as a reality, but for I think a lot of folks out there, it sounds like something in the future. But for you, it's a reality. Talk to us a little bit at the outset about the threat environment in your AOR and what this gray zone activity looks like, and how you're learning how to increase intelligence, surveillance, and monitoring through the use of unmanned systems.
Patrick, when we look at unmanned, we think a lot about the capabilities that they have, and we think a lot about competition, and a lot of the writing that a lot of the industry's done is on the conflict. We have anchored on specifically the conflict, the competition. And by that, what I mean is on every given day, we have approximately 700 fishing vessels off the coast of South America. We have people who are doing illegal things, trafficking drugs, trafficking people, those types of things. And, as the National Defense Strategy says, this is a take risk AOR. By that means we don't have as many ships or aircraft or submarines as maybe, Indo-Pacific or the European theater. So what we've done is we've used unmanned in creative ways, in a way to get after identifying what's going on, developing that maritime domain awareness, that ISRT, in order to sort of keep track of what's going on in that gray zone, be able to monitor that. And as I say that, I just realized that it really provides for the safety of the United States. And, you think about the illegal fishing that's going on. They can harvest billions and billions of dollars worth of fish that impacts the economies of South America. By using unmanned in these areas, we can identify people who are doing that malign activity, and we can send manned assets out to stop that activity. What that does is that actually provides for stability in the region, and that stability in the region actually benefits us in the United States.
Yeah, I think that this is a fantastic point. All around the world, different countries are trying to figure out how they create new partnerships with really one of two great powers. There's China and the United States, and to the extent that the United States can help to bolster a security environment where regular fishermen, regular law-abiding commercial operators can just enjoy a normal business environment under the rule of law, that's a tremendous potential contrast with what is offered by an adversarial power like China that we've seen is a bit of a bully in the Pacific in terms of the Philippines, in terms of other countries there, and has the potential to be a bully kind of anywhere in the world. And these navies, as you point out, talk to us a little bit about some of these partners and allies, because these are countries that don't have the size of a navy that the United States does, but they certainly have a lot of coast, and there's a lot of area out there. Are you beginning to see that through the use of unmanned systems, you can increase the value of the naval assets they bring to this challenge? And what does that tell you about what this means going forward?
So I want to use a little story to answer this question, Patrick. Is last year we did an exercise down off the coast of Colombia called UNITAS. It was the 64th version of the exercise. Longest running maritime exercise, one of the largest maritime exercises in the world. And what we did last year is we incorporated unmanned surface, subsurface, and air into the exercise. And you may say, well, hey, Jim, that's not really that impressive. People have done similar stuff, serials, whatever. But we didn't just incorporate it into one serial. We were specific into making it part of the whole exercise. So when we did the missile shoot, where we actually identified a target of interest that was hazarding us or hazarding the force, we were able to identify it, we were able to track it, we were able to target it, and then we were also able to provide battle damage assessment. Now, the interesting thing is that's great for us in the United States. What it really was is it resounded with our partners and allies, because then they sort of saw the value of using an unmanned surface and air vessel in this situation in order to really increase their capabilities across the board. And so when we do things like that, it gives us an ability to demonstrate to our partners the value of these assets that they could actually employ themselves. And as you know, the cost of unmanned right now is significantly less than a manned vessel. And so there's a lot of value going forward with that, especially with our partners and allies being able to demonstrate that.
Yeah, so UNITAS, huge exercise, right? 4,500 sailors, if I understand correctly, 22 warships, 3 submarines, 30 aircraft, a lot of electronic warfare, surface, anti-submarine air defense, amphibious operations, all happening at the Special Operations Forces, if I understand. First, do I have that right? Yeah, talk to me just a little bit about the scale of this thing, because that's a really enormous naval exercise to be bringing in something as new as unmanned systems at that level.
So Patrick, I talked in brief a little bit about the exercise, that I aforementioned. We also did an amphibious landing, which was really good for the commander to be able to sort of see, using an unmanned air vehicle, what was actually going on, be able to shift assets, those types of things. Probably more foundational, what we learned and what we were able to do is we also had a command element down there where we actually fused all the manned and unmanned information into the same, pane of glass. And that was at the command center. And to be able to see that information and realize that information at the command center really paid huge dividends for the U.S., but also for our partners and allies to be able to see that and realize the capability of fusing all those things together.
Yeah. So this is, I think, another great window into what the future for all the Navy is going to be like that you have particular purview of right now. INDOPACOM, as we know, is working really heavily on a mission partner environment where you can collect and synthesize all of the intelligence, all of the surveillance, all the reconnaissance data that is relevant to the AOR, and then you can distribute that to different partners or allies, kind of depending on how much they need to know, but also keeping in mind that not everybody is a Five Eyes partner, so different partners are going to have different levels of access, kind of depending on who they are. And you guys have now a real firsthand look into how that can work and how that can function. So I wonder if you could talk to me a little bit about how you go about making sure that all of the partners in the room have enough information so that their force protection is in order, so that they can operate within the mission zone that they are, but they don't have too much so it becomes a security concern to everybody else. Sounds like something that's really straightforward, but when you're dealing with the amount of data and the amount of potentially very sensitive data that these sorts of operations take, it's actually an incredibly complex and ambitious undertaking.
So, Patrick, as I answer this question, let me first share probably one of our biggest learning points. Is in this whole process, we very much understood the impact that robots were going to have at sea. And the amount of information that we were going to be able to gather from surface, subsurface, and air. Probably what we didn't have a good grasp on is that amount of data that was coming into the headquarters. And, in how overwhelming that was. And really what we determined now is that we have to have good AI tools to cipher that information to make sure that we're actually pulling out the most appropriate information. And then when we get that most appropriate information, it helps inform the operators and the decision makers, but it also is key for us to be able to share with our partners and our allies. And this year, my word for the year, it's funny that you should even ask this question, is interoperability. And too many people think interoperability is only about the exchange of communications. What we've learned is it's so much more. It's our planning, it's our training, it's our operations together. It's the way that we think about things with our partners and allies. And as we've done these exercises, and as we do similar type exercises, Defense of the Panama Canal or just PASEXs, we've been able to use these exercises to embrace that interoperability that allows us to share that information, because that information that we have is only data, okay, if we're not acting on it or sharing it.
Right. So you mentioned something that I think is really critical here, because when we talk about in regular public life, you or I reading the Twitter or the internet, we see people having conversations about AI, and there's the distinctions are actually really important. There's autonomy, helping an individual drone or system understand its environment and take appropriate action, and not cause a massive mishap, which is the case with certain electric vehicle brands that need not be mentioned. And then there's what you just talked about, which is artificial intelligence as a synthesis mechanism to bring in lots of information and understand it in a way at a time scale that would be impossible for a human, and then distribute key insights to the appropriate party in just the right time, just the right place. So I'll ask you, based on the vision for that, where that is going, and where the military wants that to go, where are we right now on an AI that can perform that really important synthesis and advising function with the ISR data that you're dealing with? Are we right about there? Is it surpassed your expectations? Does it have a ways to go? Can you give me a picture of it?
So I really think the one word that you used that was really pertinent was time scale. We have collected lots and lots of data in the past. And the problem is then you have this data, and then you have to sort of cipher through it, evaluate it, and then you can't necessarily act on it real time. One of the things that we've seen with the AI capabilities that we've used at the headquarters and we continue to develop at the headquarters is it has speeded up the whole process of us getting that information. And now we can act on it real time rather than delay. So I would tell you that I think the AI is maturing. And then the one thing that I'd emphasize, and I know Parag talks a lot about this a lot as well, is there's a lot of people who are scared of AI, right? We're not scared of AI because humans are still responsible. Humans are still in the loop when we employ any of the AI. They have to evaluate, assess, look at it, really, and in some cases even adjust, how we're utilizing the AI. And what we have seen though is the capability, the AI capability, it has been a game changer for us here at the headquarters, just because it's allowed us to, let me just use that example, that 700 fishing boats, just like you mentioned, there's 600 and some odd of those folks who are doing right by the standards, right by the rules of law. And there's no reason for me to waste any time, energy, or effort on them. I need to look at the malign activity within there. So do I see people who are turning on AIS? Do I see people who are maybe providing some sort of fuel to some sort of trafficker, either a drug trafficker or a human trafficker? So I can use some of the AI tools to gather that type of information and really to get after some of the problems and really do things at speed here at the headquarters that maybe we couldn't have done in the past.
Yeah, I think it's hard to understate the importance of that for environments in the future and really in the present. Right now, far away from Southcom and in the Red Sea, we see Houthis that are firing missiles and drones at U.S. ships and other merchant ships, actually disrupting the flow of aid to Gaza because helping the people of Gaza is not their actual intention. Where do those drones come from? A lot of them come from Iran, and a lot of the parts come from other places. And all of that smuggling of that stuff takes place on vessels that are, I think that General, what's his name? Kurilla recently described as a dark fleet. So that is also at play in the Black Sea when you look at the smuggling that's happening with Russian oil on Greek ships that have been purchased by third parties. They turn off their AIS. So all of that activity really supports adversarial actions that hurt a lot of folks. And so the ability of AI to detect that and then allow an operator, maybe even a small navy, to be first on scene to react and respond quickly, that's huge. And that has the enormous potential to save a lot of folks a lot of headache and really turn the tide in some of these situations where, it just looks like these guys are so nimble. That nimbleness, that willingness to use these cheap missiles and drones and things like that, and the supply of them, then comes from someplace. And so making transparency across that's going to turn the tide, I think, in a lot of ways against some of this activity. What do you think of this?
Yeah, so it's really interesting that you sort of mentioned the entire world, because one of the things, when people talk to me about the unmanned fleet and the hybrid fleet we have here, one of my key things is make sure that we actually share information and we inform the other fleets. And so we've actually worked really closely with Fifth Fleet, Sixth Fleet, Seventh Fleet, Pac Fleet, sharing the information, and that really has been foundational. The nice thing about Fourth Fleet is that I can do things in a benign environment. I can test things, I can operationalize things here in the Fourth Fleet AOR that maybe some of the other fleets aren't able to do. And so we build that and we leverage that. Even, I previously mentioned Unitas. While we did Unitas, part of our command element, we had a member from CTF 59, someone from Fifth Fleet there to be able to take back information and also to share information with us as we were doing it. So yeah, I think it's a learning journey for the entire Navy. And for, and certainly there's some focus on the hybrid fleet here in Fourth Fleet. We're doing operations, as the CNO has said previously, around the world. And what we're doing is we're trying to leverage that and learn from each other. And I always use the line, and I'll finish with this on this question and I think that we as the Navy have embraced this, is sometimes we learn, okay, and sometimes we win, and not always in that order. And that really is our goal, is sometimes things work out perfectly, and then other times they don't work out as perfectly, and we have to move on. And the nice thing with the unmanned stuff is something doesn't work as we thought, especially if we're leasing it, we no longer renew the lease. We just had that exact thing happen with an unmanned surface vessel that we were going to use as an interceptor. Didn't work well in the open ocean. We're going to move on. We're going to use something else.
Yeah. Well, so That's really helpful. Let's go back to something you said just a moment ago about fears and concerns around artificial intelligence, and a lot of this is, of course, culturally born of the very origin of our discussion around AI. The term robot comes from a play written in over 100 years ago now, from 1921, called Rossum's Universal Robota. Robota is a Czech word for slave. And in this play, it's fantastic. There's 3 acts. The first act, a sort of charismatic entrepreneur develops a synthetic race of human beings that promise to alleviate all human labor, and everyone celebrates him as a genius. The second act, the Robota do relieve all human labor, causing massive economic disruption, and in the third act, they destroy the world. So our understanding of artificial intelligence is born of this sort of dark fantasy. And now that we're actually grappling with it, we understand that it's the human beings that are far more responsible for it. So this is just a tool like any other tool. It's not a malevolent entity. This is just a really revolutionary capability. And you want to empower those parties that can use it responsibly. And you want to keep up with the parties that are irresponsible, that will use it for their own negligent ways. But you can't just turn it off. You can't just run away. You have to embrace it. I think that's such an important point. But to get back to what you said, so there's fear, which we all sort of have and have to wrestle with in order to embrace this new reality. But there's also, operator skepticism. And according to surveys that are done, operators in the military, and these surveys they're a little bit prejudiced towards ground operators, but really I think it fits across the services. There's a lot of skepticism about operators in terms of trusting artificial intelligence. And I think that one of the points that comes out of those surveys is that trust must be built. It's a relationship that has to happen. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what you've learned about how to build trust between commanders and autonomous systems, artificial intelligence, and maybe lower level operators and autonomy and artificial intelligence. How do you create a relationship between those two entities so that they trust one another?
So back in 2008, Patrick, we started doing experiments here at Fourth Fleet. And really what would happen is the technical community would come in and they would do all these operations in sort of a controlled environment off of the Florida Keys. And what we realized is that was it was a good opportunity. But we realized that the more that we got operators involved, the more that they actually saw not only the experiments, but the operations, and then the operation, and as we operationalize it, the more that they were going to develop that trust, that foundation, and they were going to become better watchstanders. And I would tell you, I have 5 children, and I have a number who are in the age of young sailors, and I just realized that their capability to interact with technology is significantly greater than, say, maybe someone from my generation. And what we've noticed with these operators is that the more time that they spend with it, the more trust that they develop. And it goes back to Covey and the speed of trust. Is that trust is developed over time, and seeing that it works, and then just really operationalizing it and touching it and trying it. And it goes back to that comment that I made previously. Is that sometimes we win and sometimes we learn. And we really take the opportunity to give the operators the chance to put things in their hands, and we take a little bit of risk. And the nice thing is I can take risks, in this AOR, because it's more of a benign environment. I have a balloon flying right now. There's probably some other places that people would be a little bit more uncomfortable with the balloon operating and working hand in hand with an unmanned surface vessel to sort of see how we can utilize those two assets together with an operator, and to see what advantages that we get from that.
Does that create any new competency requirements among operators in terms of, I remember when people were telling me that I had to learn Python in order to be relevant to the future. And so I speak some, but it's like my French, it's not great. And now, of course, I have, generative AIs that can do coding for me. So I'm not sure that was a good use of my time now. But in terms of operating with this stuff in the future, sailors, sea folks, operators, they already have so much they have to be competent to do their job every day. It's really pretty remarkable. And I wonder if, in order to succeed in a relationship with these new systems, does that require learning something additional on top of that, or how do you balance that in terms of personnel?
Patrick, it's a great question. And I would say that there's even more of a deepness to that than maybe just comes to mind. Typically we think of an operator and maybe an unmanned air vehicle, and there's a relationship there and a skill set that you have to develop. One of the things that we really have tried to do here at Fourth Fleet, and the guys on the staff, they laugh at me, but I call it our Reese's moment, right? Chocolate is good and peanut butter is good, right? But when we put the two together, it becomes a force multiplier. It's exponentially better, and there's no bonus in this for me by mentioning Reese's. But as I share that is it really makes a greater challenge for the operator to sort of understand how the systems work together, and then to be able to fuse them together, but then also the data that they pull and how are they going to decipher that data in order to make the best decisions. So one of the things that we've seen is that we typically do a lot of training, and we do a lot of operations, a lot of exercises to give those operators that ability to do that building block opportunity to get better at what they do, moving forward. It would be similar. I'm a big basketball player, and my boys, my three sons, are basketball players, and it's just building on skills that they have in their desire to get better. And that really is the end of the day, why we've been able to employ this in really our growth opportunity going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So on this, because I think that this brings up something that is really key. Right now these experiments are happening. This integration at this level is happening. But when I talk to folks about the challenge of incorporating unmanned systems into the broader Navy, they bring up a lot of research that still has to be done, and it's very practical stuff. What is the amount of room you have on a deck for these things? Do you have to cover them, or can they be uncovered? If they're uncovered, how long are they uncovered before you start to have operational effects from rust and other conditions like this? If you go with a smaller model, can you fit more of them? Does that improve anything? Do they need extra or different types of batteries or energy sources, et cetera? And that's just like an example of a handful of these things. And we're talking about really a menagerie that's supposed to be according to the Replicator program, at some point in the hundreds of thousands of these, because that's the scale that's really going to make a difference, in a great state competition in a lot of these environments. So I wonder if you could talk from a practical perspective. How do we scale this stuff across a Navy when already ships are so burdened with so much stuff that they already have to do? How do you then create both the conditions to bring a lot of these things onto the deck, maybe onto the naval base ashore, and then also create room to continue to experiment with them? Talk to me a little bit about that, about the challenge of creating space, even adequate housing conditions, storage, et cetera, for all of these things that now have to play a role with your sailors on a ship that's already pretty cramped a lot of the time, I think you might say.
Yeah, the brilliance of what CNO and SECNAP put together is they said, Jim, we want you to take experiments and we want you to operationalize. And so what we've been able to do, Patrick, is we've been able to do exactly what your question is we've been able to go out and we've been able to take these things to sea and say, hey, where can this work, or where doesn't this work? And then when it doesn't work, we move on very quickly. So that's the opportunity that we have is that, and then we see this. I mentioned to you that previously about the interceptor that didn't work in a certain sea state. We realized that, hey, on on a flat water, calm water, perfect. 40 knots, no problem. Well, as soon as we got anything choppy at all, it didn't work. So that what we did is we moved on very quickly. And then once we do find something, we go exactly to your point, and we're able to scale it and to build upon that and to use that. And then it gets to the CNO's point, where we're now in the use of these unmanned as a force multiplier because we've proved it, on a smaller scale, and we can now take it to a larger scale. So, we go back to my comment that the staff gets tired of hearing it. Sometimes we win and sometimes we learn. And there's some times where we've tried to do some of these things and they haven't necessarily worked as planned. And then there's other times where they work perfectly. And then I think the third thing is that there's been some times where we've been absolutely surprised by what's actually worked out.
Can you tell us or characterize some of those big surprises?
I'll give you one that's really interesting, Patrick. And I'll keep this at the unclassified level because to respect. We have operated sail drones off the northern coast of Haiti. And initially it was us and the Coast Guard working them because we were concerned about the migrants in the safety of life at sea. And one of the things that we realized is when we put these unmanned surface vessels off the coast of Haiti, they actually served a deterrent. And folks who would actually run a migration ship north, maybe into the United States or somewhere else in the Caribbean, no longer did it because they realized that they were actually being watched. And what it did is it deterred people from doing some sort of, maybe an unsafe migration that would require greater assets from the United States Navy, United States Coast Guard, in order to, protect life at sea.
When was that? That wasn't part of UNITAS. That's more recent since.
No, that's been more recently. That's actually been more recently that we, as we, so we did UNITAS. We've done our experimentations, and then over the last handful of months, what we've done is we've operated unmanned vessels at sea, surface and air vessels at sea, and really sort of got to the point where we sort of said, okay, month after month after month, how would this work? Hey, can they operate in this environment? Can they operate, in day to day? And so what we've put together, we call Windward Stack, and we use a choke point, which, you can see the value of that around the world. And we put, unmanned surface, unmanned air in those areas. In some form, we'll put unmanned undersea. And we use that, and then we build, and we sort of develop that ISRT, maritime domain awareness, and sort of understanding the environment a little bit better. But we've also shifted the resources around and tried some other things to see, how we can employ them differently. And in that process, we've been surprised specifically about the deterrent that the unmanned surface vessels were for migration.
From Haiti. Wow. Yeah. No, that's fascinating. I don't think a lot of folks appreciated that. But you can see us having, right now, immigration and illegal immigration. It's a huge political discussion. It's a huge political fight. There's good and bad political players on both sides. But the addition of new technology like this is already potentially having an impact on that future and decreasing and ameliorating that problem. Because I think we can all agree that if you have a better understanding of who is or what is coming in, and you can do that without trying to add a ton of new manned vessels that we don't have, then your outcome is just going to be better and better even more. So that's sort of fascinating. That gives us a window into a huge security concern that, in part because of the efforts that you guys are undertaking, and in part just because that's where the technology is, could potentially be much less in the future, provided we continue on this course of robust experimentation, increase our tolerance as a nation with sound risk taking. And I think that's there on the policy front. Lawmakers, the sounds from Capitol Hill over the last few years, they've become, from my vantage point, a lot more accepting and even demanding of that risk-taking than they have been in the past. Do you feel adequately supported in doing or taking the smart risks that you need to take, not only from command, but also from lawmakers? Is that your sense as well, that they now appreciate that you have to adopt a little bit more of an entrepreneurial mindset if you're really going to move these things into operation? Or are you still finding resistance to risk taking from your conversations?
We're still in the growing process. I think that we have everything that we need in order to move forward. I think that there's still there's still some people who are a little bit concerned. I would call them, they're from Missouri, meaning that they're from the Show Me State. And they just want to make sure that what we're actually doing makes sense, and that we're not taking any. I think you used the word sound, but we're making sound risk decisions, and really on a day-to-day basis, that's exactly what we're doing. And really, even to go back to Admiral Paparo's quote, as he specifically talks about how the humans are going to be part of the responsible decision making, and that really is foundational on what we're doing. Is keeping the humans as part of the responsible decision making.
Right, and that's something I think that a lot of folks don't appreciate when we talk about these things. Is how, at least according to the way the U.S. military is trying to work with both autonomy and AI right now, it's very much about improving the capabilities of an operator and not replacing that operator. And that's something of a difference between the U.S. military and the trajectory that it's on, and some competing states that are more inclined to try and scale by outsourcing decision-making to somewhat untrusted systems. That contrast is, I think, something that a lot of folks don't appreciate, and that you've highlighted here today is the centrality of the human being as strengthened and improved by the availability of AI tools is really kind of core. This is so. Admiral, thank you so much. I'm afraid we're out of time. I really appreciate you giving us this window into how the U.S. Navy in the future is going to be moving AI, artificial intelligence, into operations with partners around the world, and already how this is changing security in a lot of very critical places, very close to our shores. It's really a fascinating look into what is and will be other places. So thank you so much for taking some time with us today.
Patrick, I appreciate the talk. Thank you very much for your interest.
And thank you to our audience for tuning in. Tomorrow, we'll be wrapping up our State of Defense coverage with the State of the Air Force. We hope to see you there. For Defense One, I'm Patrick Tucker.